Joining us now on sometimes the Go Talk hotline. Now it's just the Marc Stein hotline for tonight. Yeah, the one and only Marc Stein. If you are an NBA hoops junkie, you know his incredible work, spanning many years, decades for the Times, ESPN. He's got a great Substack, and now, most recently and most importantly, has joined our DLLS crew down there in Dallas, covering the Dallas Mavericks.
You see the hat.
Also joining our guys Mahrez and Legler on the ALLCITY Network's All-NBA podcast regularly throughout this season. Follow him on that Twitter machine at The Stein Line. The one and only Marc Stein joins us now. Marc, what's up, man? Thanks for joining us.
Gentlemen, thank you for that warm welcome. Some good reads you guys just knocked out. Gottlieb doesn't do reads.
This is my line every time, Marc. You know, I'm playing with Jordan and Pippen over here. I just stand in the corner and wait if they need to kick it out to the corner for three. I'm happy to chip in, but I let these guys cook.
Good and entertaining. Good energy.
Appreciate
well,
that.
we appreciate that.
Thank you.
He brings the hoops brains. We bring the ad reads. This is, it's a division of labor situation.
Correct.
Well, so Marc, we were actually just before you joined us, we're chatting about how Zach LaVine had a couple of big buckets in the fourth quarter of this Bulls comeback win tonight. He did miss a few games with a groin strain. He just made his first game back tonight. What have you made of Zach LaVine's play thus far and all of the drama that is surrounding Zach and the Bulls as they enter this quasi-rebuild season while he is somewhat awkwardly still here?
Actually, the way this game played out tonight, I think, is perfect for my CHGO debut, because this team, every time I think about the Bulls, this team fascinates me on how they're going to deal with this season. And listening to you guys for 5 minutes before I got on, all I heard was the glee in all of your voices about this comeback from 18 down and how good Zach looked after missing a few games. And I didn't get a sense from listening to the Trusty Bulls post-game show that you three have any interest in hearing anything about tanking. You guys gave me the impression you want to see this team play to its ceiling based on the roster. And look, I just saw the Bulls in Dallas, and talking to people with the team, that's the vibe you get from being around this team. I spoke to one person within the organization, and they were saying, Zach's going to be an all-star in the East this season. So if that's why this team I am so fascinated by, because they are way too good, especially in an East that has 6 or 7 or maybe even 8 good teams, but certainly no depth. How on earth are your Chicago Bulls going to hang on to that top 10 protected pick with this roster, with Zach LaVine playing the way he is, with Vucevic playing the way he is, with the Josh Giddey impact, Kobe White, I can go on and on and on. How on earth are the Bulls going to hang on to that top 10 pick?
By trading Marc. Zach and Vooch, Marc.
That's Marc.
How you do it.
Marc. Oh, man. Don't mistake the glee in the voices for what we really, truly want. We're talking about the victory that they had. And, yes, it was, granted, great victory that they had. But trust me, all three of especially this right here, is definitely on that train of we want to keep this pick. We definitely would love to keep this top 10 pick. But you're right, it's difficult because not only do they have to showcase guys like Zach LaVine and Vooch and all these other players, and Lonzo also, and they're not even playing a guy like Torrey Craig, but you're doing this while trying to play these young guys, and that is just a really difficult thing for a team that I think should be trying to not win all of these games. Like, how do you look at this and then I know it flabbergasts you just sitting here watching this kind of team, but how do you look at it and how the Bulls can showcase these guys and try to get them off this team where they can, get started with that youth movement?
This is exactly why the Bulls scores are some of the first that I look for after every game, because tonight, this is what Billy Donovan is not a tanking coach. This is exactly the kind of performance he wants. I'm sure you guys have talked ad nauseum about how much faster this team is playing, how much different it looks offensively without DeRozan here. And again, I cannot wait to see how this plays out, because yes, they are, they need Zach LaVine to play well to, quote, rebuild his value. But the reality is his contract is such that he's going to be difficult to trade even if he is an all-star. I don't think they're going to face the same trouble when they get to the point that they're willing to listen to offers on Vucevic. Vucevic is off to a tremendous start. He's shooting the hell out of the ball. I visited with him in Slovenia in late August, and he walked me through the offseason work he put in to work on his shot. He knows he didn't shoot it well last year. Well, right now he's shooting the cover off the ball. And with the way teams in this league need size, his contract is very tradable. I don't think there's going to be any issues if the Bulls reach the point that they're willing to take calls on him. But with Zach, it's all a function of the contract. People don't doubt that Zach LaVine is still an all-star level player who can do a lot of offensive damage. That's not the question. I don't know that he really has to rebuild much or prove much, honestly. But he's got a lot of zeros on that contract, and it's just not going to be easy to move. And again, right now, as we speak today, like, they're playing like a team that's chasing a playoff spot in the East. Like, that's the goal. So again, how long is that going to last? Because you cannot lose. This draft is too good. I am not a full-time draft expert. The draft, to be covered properly in the year of 2024, you need to cover the draft 24/7 and make that your only job. But everybody knows that this draft is loaded, and you don't necessarily have to get the number one pick to get a good player, but you certainly don't want to send your top 10. You don't want to send your lottery pick to San Antonio. That would be devastating.
It's so tough because that's the situation they find themselves in. And it's such a fine line. We talked about it so much about, yes, they want to be competitive. As you mentioned, they're playing like a team that wants to be competitive. Billy Donovan is not, playing Modest Buzelis, for example, 25, 30 minutes a night, because that's the kind of move.
That's my guy. I love him.
So, okay, well then let's go there. What did you like about Modest? And was Dallas the game that he really had his moment there?
I think I saw his best game. Look, in all candor, and I think you guys will appreciate this, Buzelis came on the podcast I do with Chris Haynes shortly after being drafted. So he immediately rocketed to the top of my Rookie of the Year consideration. Nice. Also, he wears the historic number 14 jersey. I'm guessing all three of you are probably too young to have watched The White Shadow, the greatest show, maybe the greatest television show ever, starring the fictional Chicago Bull Kenny Reeves, who wore number 14 for the Bulls. So when I see Buzelis in that 14, I think back to the 70s and how much I loved that show and how much I love Kenny Reeves is my all-time favorite Chicago Bull. Up. Even though he never actually played for them.
But clearly the reason that Modest chose that number, right?
I was thinking you might have liked it because it's Dirk's numbers flipped, but...
Well, it's funny. To be real, Dirk wanted 14 when he came to the NBA, but Robert Pack had it. And, veterans always get, a rookie, even as prized as Dirk was, he couldn't get 14 off Robert Pack. That's how 41 happened. He flipped it.
Robert Pack, for some reason, I don't know if people ever collected basketball cards, but when I was a kid, I did.
Oh yeah.
And for whatever reason, I just had like a million Robert Pack cards.
I wish we knew each other then, sir. We would have definitely been swapping some things. Go ahead.
Hey, in all seriousness, that Buzelis I saw his best NBA game so far. I think he was really lively. He makes stuff happen out there, and he's not afraid. He wants it. He's
unlimited confidence.
Yeah, which I love. I mean, I think he has something.
Other than the Zach LaVine comeback story and will they or won't they find a trade for him, Mark, the other big, headline for the Bulls coming into the season was the Caruso for Josh Giddey trade and how Giddey would fit into this. Obviously, Giddey has been part of the equation of the Bulls playing much faster offensively than they did during the DeMar DeRozan era, but a lot of his fellow draft class mates just signed themselves big extensions on their rookie deals Giddey and the Bulls did not come to an extension agreement. And Bulls fans this season are wondering, how good is Josh Giddey? Was it a fluke, or was it just circumstances that caused him to get played off the floor and out of, OKC's rotation in their playoff run last year? And is this a guy that you really want to be committing a multi-year deal worth maybe somewhere in the ballpark of 120, 130, 150 million dollars to build with and build around? What do you make of the Giddey fit in Chicago?
He looks like a different guy in a Bulls uniform, I got to be honest. But look, all the whispers at extension time and the extension window for the class of 2021 first-round picks, it closed on the eve of opening night. So the Bulls had not seen him yet in a regular season game. All the chatters, all the whispers were that there were no substantive talks about an extension, that the Bulls really wanted to see how Giddey would look playing for them before these guys really got into extension talks. But the reality is, the ball's in his hands. He's running this offense. I mean, most guards in this class are getting contracts in the $30 million a year average range, like Suggs in Orlando, like Quickly in Toronto. I mean, if Giddey has a big stats, successful season, I imagine he's going to be wanting more than that. So that's something the Bulls have to be prepared for. But also that's, Giddey is an illustration of why this whole discussion we're having, we're not just talking Zach LaVine and Nikola Vucevic. I mean, the Bulls have several competent NBA veteran players. Kobe White's coming off a breakout season, and I love watching him play. Like, they've got 5, 6, 7 good players that, again, it's going to be really hard to finish. The most you can fall in the lottery is 4 spots. So if my math is right, and I wouldn't bet on it because I'm getting old, my math and my memory are fading, but I think that means you can't finish worse than 6th to be sure you don't fall out of the top 10. Like, how are the Bulls going to have one of the 6th worst records in this league with their current roster?
Honestly,
and they're more than a trade or two away from, answering that question, I think.
Yeah, no, you're right about that. And I don't know. I think we're looking at the Bulls and how they play and not having a guy like that on their team, for me, kind of lends itself to, okay, they're going to go on a few stretches where they don't win against those teams that have those kind of guys. Like, we just saw that when they played Minnesota, and Minnesota basically toyed with them for 3 quarters, and then Anthony Edwards said, I'm better than everyone on your squad. Here goes some 3-point shots. Here goes a victory. And plus their schedule, I think, that's coming up. They got Cleveland next coming up. They got to play the Rockets. Actually, they got Cleveland twice. Mm-hmm. They got to play the Knicks also. They got to play the Rockets. So I think the schedule will kind of also lend itself, to that. But to your point, it's been a really weird season so far. And we're seeing teams that are losing games that I don't think any of us had being this bad. Like, has it been wild to you to sit there and watch that at these teams like Milwaukee and Philadelphia kind of struggle right now?
I mean, the whole East has been wild. I mean, Cleveland's going 82-0. Boston is Boston. And everybody else is middling or worse. And the West is winning every interconference game. So, yeah, it's been a very weird start. And look, I mean, the true story, all jokes aside, the true story of the season so far has been the injuries. It's just been nonstop. It's been awful, dispiriting. And, today, I tweeted about this as well. I wrote an injuries suck column. That was my headline, like a week into training camp. I had to write another one before October was over because the injury list got that long. And then just today, Zion Williamson, John Morant, Kevin Durant, all out, weeks, not days. It just won't stop. So that's been part of it. But yeah, it's been a very weird season. I have to say, though, I just knocked my microphone off my desk and the screen doesn't go low enough. You should have seen the catch I made. Man, I didn't think I could do that at my age. I wish that would have been on camera.
You take credit.
Yeah. Quick reflexes never go away.
Mark, I got one more kind of like bigger picture one for you. Going back to this idea of like the Bulls have too much talent to be in a position where they're going to ensure they get their draft pick. The whole Eastern Conference, the West is obviously a different animal right now, but the Eastern Conference has been, I guess parity is one way to put it. Another way to put it would just be that like none of these teams aside from Boston and Cleveland are very good. And I think there's a lot of teams in the Western Conference that are obviously a level up from that, but still in that same kind of morass where everybody's
not going into the season. We thought the Knicks were going to be excellent. They've been off to a very bumpy start. And look, Towns has been great for them. Towns has been their best player, but the Knicks haven't come anywhere close to the team we were expecting. Orlando started with a lot of promise, and then they lost Banchero. Their offense is even in the best of times, they're offensively challenged. Without Banchero, they are really, really struggling. Milwaukee and Philly, Philly hasn't had, Philly's been missing at least two of their stars the whole time. So their struggles are, you can rationalize what's happening with the Sixers. Milwaukee was not supposed to be this bad. All the talk coming into the season was Doc Rivers, full training camp, Giannis and Dame will be better. Okay, they don't have Middleton. And, Middleton, we didn't know he was going to be signed. We still haven't seen Chris Middleton. So, look, again, the East was not supposed to have depth. But I actually thought 1 through 8 in the East, Miami was almost universally picked 8th. And when you have Eric Spoelstra as your coach and you still have Butler and Bam Adebayo, I thought 1 to 8, the East was going to be pretty solid. We have, Indiana's another team that hasn't come anywhere close to replicating their Eastern Conference Finals form. So, again, the East is supposed to have at least 8 good teams, and then I think Atlanta, Chicago were projected to be in that 9-10 range, and then it really was going to fall off from there. But look, the Nets have been scrappy. We saw that tonight. They almost beat Cleveland. Charlotte has been surprisingly scrappy. But again, I can't wait to see your guys' faces in May if the Bulls haven't secured the 6th worst record in the NBA.
And that's kind of my question is do you think that teams like the Pistons, the Nets, who just had a really tight game with the Cavs, the Bulls, obviously, that they could be so short-sighted to potentially miss out on, a franchise-changing player that Dave's talking about just for a shot at the play-in for, the third.
Well, let's say that the best, maybe the most promising thing about Chicago's season to this point, when we kind of run through it, it is the fact that Charlotte and Brooklyn, and you got to throw Detroit in there as well. Detroit has been, very difficult to beat early on. So all those teams were widely assumed to be automatically tanking. Now, again, it's also early. We're basically 10 games in. How long is this going to last? But, reasonably going into the season, you guys tell me, Toronto, Washington, Brooklyn, Detroit, Charlotte, weren't those a pretty universal bottom 5 in the East?
Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
So the Bulls have to finish down there somewhere. And so they will love it if the Detroits and the Charlottes keep playing the way they are. Now, Charlotte, they've been interesting. LaMelo Ball, Brandon Miller have been really dynamic together out of the gate. So maybe I'm underselling what the Charlottes and Detroits are capable of, but I'd be worried, gents.
We're worried. I'm having trouble sleeping, Mark. Before we let you go, this is a Bulls podcast, but we are all hoops junkies of all kinds. And I feel like for Sabine, we have to ask Marc Stein this.
Oh, please.
There's nobody in the world of NBA reporters, beat writers, journalists who have been more synonymous with Dallas Mavericks coverage over the last 2 decades than you, Marc Stein. Me and Big Dave used to do a Bulls postgame show for NBC with a buddy, Sabine, who is a Chicago transplant and diehard lifelong Mavs fan. Yeah. When I say to you, Marc Stein, 2006 NBA Finals, Heat versus Mavs, what's the first thing that comes to mind?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is Dirk Nowitzki and a lot of staffers that he's close to staying in their locker room. Like, I was a very slow writer. I probably didn't file my story for ESPN till 4 or 5 in the morning that night. They were still there. They were so crushed to lose that game 6 at home after going up 2-0 in that series. And like, they just spent, and I didn't know it at the time, but they spent all night in the building just absorbing. I mean, at that time, there had only been one comeback in NBA history from 2-0 down in the finals. And that was all the way back in the 77 finals when Portland did it to Dr. J in Philly. So at that point, a comeback from 0-2 was just unheard of. Middle three game Dallas. It is, or actually no, Game 6 was in Dallas, so no, they had already switched the format. But just a comeback from 2-0 was unheard of back then. And then for Dallas to get its vengeance in 2011, that was huge.
As Bulls fans who had to watch that Bulls Heat conference final series before that, I think everyone in Chicago was rooting for Dallas in 2011.
My memory, my God, I hate when. Yes, so it was first 2 games in Dallas, middle 3 in Miami, last 2 in Dallas, and Miami won Game 6 in Dallas.
Yeah. Well, so it's cool to get that insider info on the locker room situation after the Dallas loss. And I was saying the correct answer, by the way, was the number of Dwayne Wade free throw attempts in that series. That's what drives.
Was it 97?
Yeah. So he had more free throw attempts than were minutes played in that series.
Incredible.
Mark, we appreciate you joining us, man.
Get right in on the Mavs show.
Oh yeah, he's been watching.
He's a fan.
Speaking of, if you guys at there, Bulls Nation, can't get enough content, check out not only, of course, the new crew down there at DLLS Mavs. You can go watch their post-game show from them beating us down a few nights ago if you want to.
Absolutely.
And Marc Stein joining in with Mahrez and Tim Legler on the All-City Network's All NBA podcast throughout the season. Read his Substack. That's great too. Follow him on Twitter. The Stein Line. Mark, we appreciate the time. We look forward to the next time you swing through, buddy.
We'll do it again soon. And Gottlieb promised me that if I come in studio, Italian beef will be served. Is that true?
Absolutely.
Guaranteed.
We all silly like the mayor.